Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are back and we are going to be covering the World Rapid Chess Championship being held in Doha, Qatar. Now, before we jump into our recap, those of you guys at home might be wondering, why am I not there competing myself? Now, the reason, which I've laid out in quite a few videos and interviews over the last couple of weeks, is my wife recently gave birth to our son. Now, I did go and compete in the Global Chess League held in India recently, but ultimately that was my one tournament that I decided to play because I had the option of picking and choosing. So I decided not to play the World Rapid and Blitz Championship in Doha, but there are many top players competing. Now, we are going to start with the current World Chess Champion, Gukesh from India, who is playing in this event. Many players have been critical of Gukesh. They've been saying he's all about classical chess. He's not good at rapid and blitz, yada, yada, yada. Now, for me, when I look at someone like Gukesh, he is obviously very strong at classical chess, but he is also a very young player who is consistently improving his game. So as such, I personally start to laugh when I hear people talk about his rapid and blitz skills as though he's not as good as the elite players, because Gukesh is only going to improve with time before he peaks somewhere, let's just say in his late 20s. So let's get into the action. Now, Gukesh started off a little bit shaky. He had a draw in one of the early rounds. Today being the first day of the event, the players are playing 5 games. Now, despite Gukesh giving up a draw, we're going to pick it up with his last round of the day, the 5th round, where he's playing against the very talented Iranian junior player, Sina Movahed, who is all but 15 years. Now, of course, for anybody who speaks Farsi out there, I'm going to say Bibakshid in advance for mispronouncing the name, but we are doing something for the memes. So, of course, with someone like Sina Movahed, who is one of the best meme names in all of chess, let's jump into the action. Both players on 3.5 out of 4 points. Gukesh has the white pieces, and the game starts out with the move e4. We get the move c5, knight to f3, and now we have the move d6 being played. Gukesh, of course, goes into the classic Najdorf system, and he decides to play this move g3. Now, white, of course, has many different options here, but g3 is one of the safer ones where white aims to fianchetto the bishop to g2 potentially, and castle the king out of the center. So we get e5. Gukesh plays knight f3, and now we get the move bishop e7, and here Gukesh plays the move a4. We get castles, bishop g2, knight bd7, and now we have the move castles being played. Now, normally it's a little bit unusual for white to drop the knight back to f3, but this really symbolizes what modern day chess is about, and it's all about getting a position and playing as opposed to the concrete main lines. Normally white goes knight b3 or knight e2, but nonetheless Gukesh comes up with this very simple setup of finishing his development. So we get knight c5. Gukesh plays queen to e2, guarding the pawn on e4, and now we get this move bishop to d7. Gukesh plays bishop g5, and now we get the move h6, we get the trade, and the move rook f to d1. Now, this shows one of the great strengths of Gukesh, which is his preparation, because even though black has the 2 bishops here, white has great space in the center. The rook targets the pawn. You can put this knight on d5, and in the long run, black has this bishop that's kind of walled in here. The bishop really doesn't have any scope, so this bishop can become a big liability. So we get the move bishop to e7. Gukesh plays knight d2 here. The reasoning behind this move is that Gukesh wants to start using these knights, moving them towards the queen side. We get knight to e6, Gukesh plays knight d5, and now we get the move bishop c6. Here Gukesh plays move knight to b3, and to me this move seemed a little bit awkward. I thought the more natural move pawn to c3 made more sense, because you stop this move knight to d4, but you also keep both of these squares available for this knight, and with more flexibility I thought this was a little bit better. But we get knight to b3. And now Sina Movahed plays the move rook to e8, and this move is simply a big inaccuracy. What should have happened here is that Sina Movahed should have played the move pawn to a5, and the reason here is that this knight on b3 now doesn't really have anywhere to go. You might look at the knight and think, oh, it's maybe targeting the pawn, but with both the rook and the queen guarding this pawn on a4 now becomes a big weakness, and white can't easily improve the position here. Instead, we got to move rook to e8, and now after the move a5, now Gukesh is in the driver's seat. He's got this great knight that he can put on b6 for a classic bastion. You can bring this knight back around, and already here it's looking like it's going to be a very long period of suffering for Sina. So we get the move bishop to f8. Gukesh plays knight b6, rook to b8, and now we get the move c3, stopping this knight from jumping to d4, and the knight also can't go to f4 either. Combine that with this pawn that's under pressure and this bishop that's very sag on the back rank and not active on any diagonals, white has a big advantage. So we get queen to g5. Gukesh plays h4, queen g6, and now we get the move knight to d2. Gukesh here showing great understanding, rerouting his knight to target the pawns in the center. We get rook to d8, b4, and now we get the move f5. Gukesh trades, and here Gukesh plays the move knight d5. Now I was very impressed when Gukesh spent quite a bit of time here. He spent nearly 2 full minutes before playing this move, because it would be very easy here to see a free pawn. Chop, chop, chop. You win a pawn. Should be great. But if you do this after the move d5, queen to e2, and bishop d6, suddenly black is playing in the center here, and with no fianchettoed bishop in front of his king and these light square weaknesses, black has very serious counterplay. So in this position, Gukesh plays knight d5, we get queen to f7, and now we get the move knight c4. Now, one thing that I mentioned while I was doing my live stream commentary of this game on my Kick channel is that the only big danger I foresaw here is that if Gukesh gets low on time, Cena Move Ahead, who's played a lot of blitz games online and has great intuition, could come up with some tricks and beat Gukesh. So you get king to h8. Gukesh plays knight e3, g6, bishop e4, and now we get the move h5. Now this is a move that I really like here, because what Cena Move Ahead realizes is that this bishop, which is very passive on f8, walled in by the pawns here on the diagonals, can now go to h6 and target this juicer on e3. So we get queen c2, king h7, and now Gukesh plays this move g4 after another 2-minute thing. And as soon as I saw this move and knight to f4 on the board, I'm like, uh-oh, Gukesh has a minute and a half left. He's down 3 minutes. This is exactly the scenario that I was concerned for Gukesh should it occur during the game. So Gukesh takes. We get knight takes, king to h1, and now we have the move queen to e6, threatening to tickle the king on h1. Gukesh plays move f3 here, trying to reinforce the classic wooden shield in the middle of the board. But also, if black plays queen to h3, now white can play queen to h2 and offer the trade of these queens. So you get the move knight to g3. Now, it's worth noting here that with a 3-minute edge on the clock, I was paying attention to the players and their reactions during the game, and it seemed to me that Cena Move Ahead was very nervous here. And that's one of the big differences between playing online and over the board, which is that over the board is just a completely different environment altogether. So we got knight g3 here. This is a move that I was not a fan of. I thought bishop to h6 here, hitting the knight, made more sense. Probably what Cena Move Ahead was worried about was the move rook to g1 here, but the computer actually laughs at this move. It says you can take the juicer on e3, and if white plays knight takes bishop here, you can trade the bishops on e4. If takes, it's checkmate in Uno. If you take with the pawn, there's check, block, free pony, game over. And in this position, if white plays move rook takes g6 or bishop takes let's say bishop g6, king to h8 here, with both the rook and the knight hanging here and this threat of queen h3, black is going to win the game. If you go rook takes g6, black will check, white will block, trade, black takes a knight here, and now there are no good fossils because the bishop will always be able to capture this bishop on e4, and here black has 2 extra minor pieces on the board. So bishop to h6 would have been a very strong move, and after knight to g4 and the move bishop to f4, black has a big advantage according to the computer. Instead, we get knight g3, Gukesh moves the king, we get the chop, queen takes, and at this point I started feeling like even though Gukesh is low on time, his chances of winning this game are fairly decent, or I should say not losing are pretty high as well, because here, even though the king is a little bit weak, you've got these knights that are really gripped. The rook and the queen grip this knight. This knight's going here where it's gripped by the pawn and the queen. So with these knights on the 2 squares here, white should not be in danger. So we get bishop h6. Gukesh plays knight g4, rook f8, h5, and now we get to move king to g7. Now, it's very easy to be critical of the moves here when you're looking with a computer. I will say at this point in the game, it's a very tough position to play for both sides here because white is low on time, but black also doesn't have great attacking ideas here because with these knights that are so blockaded or so locked in with the bastions, it's not easy to play. Now, the computer here wants to move bishop to g5, and I think after pawn takes, black can go king g7, and apparently here black is much better because white is kind of stuck. If you move the knight to f2 here, there's rook to h8, and there's some threats here on the king side, but just in general, the main reason is that all the pieces stay on the board. Instead, we get king g7. Now Gukesh decides to trade everything off, and after this move knight to f2, now things are looking extremely promising because Gukesh has rerouted this knight. It's going to go to e4, and with these knights, the double bastion in the center of the board, only white can be better. And even though Gukesh only has 19 seconds, all his moves should be able to be played instantly. And of course, when you add in the 10-second increment for every move, he is in no danger of losing. So we get rook f5. c4 is played to reinforce the pony. We got king takes, knight e4, rook f8, and now Gukesh plays rook to a3, guarding this pawn. Now it's really beautiful when you look at the position here, because this bishop is not targeting anything. This bishop is on a completely open diagonal, and so these knights here, the double bastion, completely blockade black from creating any play. When you combine that with the 3 pawns versus 2 here, the weak pawn in the center, and no way of activating this bishop because this knight and pawn kill this diagonal, white is much better. So we get bishop h4. Gukesh takes the juicer here. This is a slight mistake, by the way, but again, with limited time, hard to be very critical. He takes, we get check, king f1, and now we move bishop d7. Now in this position, Gukesh plays the move knight to e4 here. This is a big mistake. Correct was to play the move rook to e3, so that after the check, you can simply run your king up the board here, and white is much better. But after bishop f2, rook takes e5, takes. It is kind of hard with seconds on the clock to see that after king e4, white is winning, so it's not very easy, and you're trying to trust your instincts. So Gukesh plays knight e4. We got the check, king e2, we got check, king e3, and now we get the move rook b2. Now, one of the great things here about this position for Gukesh is that the onus is on seeing a move ahead to find the best moves, because white's king is safe, you have these knights here, and black is simply down a pawn in the center of the board. So we get rook b2. Now we get to move rook d2, and this is a very serious mistake. Now the computer here wants a very unusual looking move, rook to d3, and after bishop g2 and knight to d2, followed by marching this king up the board or playing rook to g1 here, white is still significantly better. Instead, we get rook to d2. Now in this position, seeing a move ahead, plays the move rook takes d2 after a 20-second thing, and after this move, the game and the position completely collapsed for him. Now, in this position, what Cena move ahead needed to play was a very tactical move, bishop g2, sacking the rook, because here, if white takes the bishop, black takes back, and white does not really have a good way of guarding this pawn. White can play f4, but after the rook trade, takes, and rook takes f4 here, black is completely fine. Now this bishop is going to become very active, targeting both these pawns on the queen side, and black can no longer end up in any trouble. So it was very surprising to see Cena move ahead miss this bishop g2 move. If white were to take the rook, after rook takes pawn, king d2, and rook takes a3, now we have even number of pieces on the board, but white no longer has a stable bastion on e4, and after knight c3 and bishop g5, now these bishops are very active. Probably it's still a draw with perfect play, but now black is the one who's trying to press and win the game. Instead, Cena move ahead decides to play the move rook takes rook on d2, and now after king takes d2, white is up a pawn, these knights are free to jump, and at this point the game is effectively over. We got bishop g2, king e2, bishop h3, and after rook to a1, Gukesh is moving his rook over to the king side. This king is going to get checked, the queen side pawns are very weak here, and white is going to win the game. So we got the move bishop e6, rook g1, king h5, rook to h1 here, pinning this bishop on h4. It's kind of beautiful that the king goes to either of these squares. On the f file, the king gets checkmated by these knights. So we get king h5, rook h1, rook h8, and now Gukesh plays knight c5. We get bishop f5, and after knight to e3 here, Cena move ahead resigns, because when he moves the bishop backwards, Gukesh will play knight g2, and after king g5, white doesn't have to trade off right away, but white can simply trade everything off, take the pawn, and with the 3 pawns versus 1, white is going to push this p on the queen side and win the game very soon. So Gukesh gets a very big win in this 5th and final round of the day. This pushes him to a score of 4.5 points out of 5, where he is tied for the lead. So as this is a World Rapid and Blitz and there's so many great players competing, let's move to our next game that we're going to cover. Now in the next game, we have the world talented, the elite talented player Alireza Firouzja, originally from Iran, now representing France. Very recently, Alireza competed in the Global Chess League, and he had a phenomenal score of 7 points out of 10, gaining a whopping 21 points in Rapid and vaulting himself up to number 2 in the world currently. So after this great result in the Global Chess League, Alireza changed his mind and decided that he wants to give it a go in this event, and he late regs for the tournament, and he's here competing in Doha. So in the first round, Alireza has a black piece against Niaz Merdshed, rated 24.96, and let's dive into the game. So we get d4. Alireza goes knight f6, c4 g6, knight f3, bishop g7, g3 castles, bishop g2, and d6. Now this, of course, is what is known as the classic King's Indian defense. Alireza uses to great effect in the Global Chess League. He had a couple of very nice games against Fabiano Caruana, and sticking true to the theme of how he plays, he goes for it once again. So here we get knight to e4. Now this move is considered to be a little bit dubious, but it does stop white from building this big white center immediately. So we get knight d2, Alireza trades, and now we get the move e5. Here we get bishop c3, e4, knight d2, and now Alireza plays the move f5. In this position, we get the move e3, Alireza plays knight d7, and now we get the move queen b3 and the move knight to f6. Now, one thing you'll notice here is that Alireza has played a very simple opening of development here. He's got the connect 4, and against someone who's much lower rated, generally you just want to get a position to play, and if you keep the game going, sooner or later the class of your moves will be higher than your opponent's. So we get d5 here. Alireza plays queen e7, we get rook e1, and now we get the move a5. Now d5 is a move that I really don't like here. f3 is a very thematic move to play here with the idea of trying to open up these diagonals, maybe open up the center of the board here. White is actually marginally worse still, but once we get this move d5, which I think is just a clean positional mistake, even if white gets f3, this pawn is in the way of opening up the diagonal. So we get rook e1, a5, f3, Alireza trades, and now we get the move knight d7. Here we get bishop d4, Alireza plays b6, and now we get the move queen c3. Alireza plays knight e5, we get bishop g2, and now we have the move bishop to h6. Now this move is a little bit inaccurate. The computer wants to move bishop d7. I suspect the reason Alireza did not play this move is that he's recently been in a must-win mindset throughout the Global Chess League. And if you play bishop d7 and white gets e4 here, it's very easy to look at this position and see only two open files, both open files, the e file is clogged by the ponies here on top of each other, and the chance of maybe winning against a lower player where they can make big mistakes are reduced. So when Alireza goes bishop h6, what he's trying to do here is that if white plays e4, you can just go f4, and now you'll notice the center is completely clogged after takes, the e file is not open, black has queen h4, and black is going to win the game. So we get the move knight to f3 instead. Alireza plays knight g4, and now we get the move h3, knight f6, and the move knight to d2 back. Here Alireza plays knight h5, we get rook to f3, and the move bishop d7, and now we have this move rook e to f1. Now what's amazing about this game so far is that Alireza has really been testing the waters. He's sort of gambling in a sense where he's really basically asking his opponent to push the p in the center to try to open it up, and every chance white has had, white has rejected. e4 would have been good here. I believe e4 here also would have been good, but he's been rejecting it at every turn, and as I hit the wrong forward button, I spoil the result. But let's keep going with the recap as it is. So we get rook e8, we get king to h2, Alireza plays c5, and this move is the fatal error which dooms Alireza to no longer win the game. Now here what black should play is a move like g5, trying to play g4, but when Alireza goes c5, we get this trade, and probably he's thinking, well, white's going to go rook f2, right? Rook to f2, you take on g2 here, and after king g2, black wins a pawn, rook e2, and a move like queen b7, and it's gg, why not? Unfortunately for Alireza, by playing this move, he forces his opponent into a situation where the opponent must go for the sack. Here we got the move rook takes f5, sacking the rook, because now the bishop on c6 is on pre, and Alireza plays the move rook takes f5. We get takes, and here we got rook c8, and this is just a bad move here. Now in this position, there is only one move after which black is not in serious trouble, and that move is bishop takes e3, counter sacking the rook on e8. But I suspect that at this point in the game, Alireza was probably unhappy. He's still in this mindset of trying to win at all costs, so he goes rook c8. We got takes, bishop d5, king f8, and now we get the move knight f3. Alireza plays rook e8, we get queen d3, knight g7, and now we get the move knight to h4, hitting the pawn on f5. Here Alireza plays queen d7, and now we get the move g4. Alireza plays rook to e5, re-sacking the rook. Now, one of the great things for Alireza in this game is that he's playing someone in the first round much lower rated, who's probably feeling very nervous at this point. So when rook e5 is on the board here, his opponent makes a mistake by taking the rook. Had the move knight to f3 been played here, targeting this rook on e5, if black takes the bishop, you can simply take, and then after f takes g4 here, there's queen takes h7, winning the game on the spot. And if black moves the rook backwards here, white can go g5, trapping this bishop on h6. There's no escape score, and white will win. But here we get the move bishop takes rook, pawn takes, and even though white is still winning here, now the task is very, very difficult. I don't really expect someone under 2700 to be able to convert. We get the move knight takes f5. Apparently king g2 is correct, but after takes here, we get the move queen takes pawn. Pawn takes is the last chance to keep the game going, but after a move like queen to e7 with the queen getting very active here, I do think that Alireza would have been able to save the game. Instead, we get the trade of the queens here, and now with the opposite color bishops on the board, the game ends peacefully in a couple of moves here after king f3 and the move king b3, bishop d4, king f6, king e4 here. Black will simply wait forever on the dark squares here, something like this. You just keep waiting, yo-yoing, and the game will be a draw. Now, unfortunately for Alireza, this game would be a sign of things to come. He would draw in this first game, but he would also draw an additional 3 games in the remaining 4 rounds. So with 1 win and 4 draws, Alireza is behind by quite a few points headed in day 2. If he turns it on and plays the way he did in the Global Chess League, he has a chance. But as it stands right now, things are not looking good. So for our final game of this recap from day 1 of the FIDE World Rapid and Blitz tournament being held in Doha, Qatar, we of course have the 5-time world chess champion, the superstar of chess, Magnus Carlsen. Now, the game that we're going to take a look at is in the 3rd round, I believe it is, of this event. Maybe it's the 4th round, where Magnus is playing with the black pieces against David Anton Guerrero. Now, we get the move knight f3. Magnus plays knight f6, b3, d6, d4, and the move g6. Now, anybody who's watched my channel over the last 5 years probably is very familiar with this opening. I've probably had a million games with this double fianchetto setup from the white side. However, one thing that I've also said that people sometimes misunderstand is I've spoken about Magnus Carlsen and how one of the things you really don't want to do against him is simply play chess, because the quality of his moves over the course of a game and a tournament are much better than everybody else. And when you choose to play chess versus concrete theory, where you get 20 book moves in, generally he finds ways to outplay opponents. So we get b5, bishop g2, bishop b7, queen d3, and now we get the move a6. We get the move castles, knight bd7, and here we get this move knight fd2. Magnus trades the bishops at castles, and after c4 we get this move pawn to e5. Now, this really shows the class of Magnus in this game, because this looks like a very nothing burger kind of opening. We've had a trade of the bishops. There are bishops on the board. White should have some play in the center, but here Magnus plays e5, which is the top computer move, completely ignoring that a pawn is hanging on the queen side. Now, this gets back to what I was saying about playing chess with Magnus. You want to play concrete lines that you know very well, because when you choose to just play chess, play a random position, he does find the best moves more often than not. So here David Anton decides to go all in. He takes his pawn on b5, and now Magnus plays move c5. We got bishop b2, and after this move d5, on first glance you might think, well, wait, white's up a pawn, right? 1 2 3 4 5 6, 1 2 3 4 5. It's looking really, really good. But the problem for white here is that white is way behind in development, and if you play a move like knight c3, trying to connect these 2 rooks on the back row, after rook to b8, if you play queen d3, after c4, queen c2, and d4, suddenly you're in all kinds of trouble with the bishop and the knight getting forked by these pawns. Additionally, if you were to play a move like queen to a6, after rook to e8, this queen is very, very wayward here. Black has a million different ways to target the queen, and it's a very, very tough position to play. Now the thing about this is, when I looked at this during my live stream, I thought, okay, whatever, not a huge deal. But this does show how good Magnus is, because there's no doubt that Magnus has not seen this structure before, but his instinct and his feel about the concepts and the pressure that's looming here with these 2 pawns in the center, combined with the lack of white development and the open E and the open B files, really does show how strong he is. So we get rook b8. Here we got the move queen to a4, and now Magnus plays d4. We get knight to e4 here. If white moves the knight to, say, b5, for example, after rook to e8, pressuring the pawn, let's say you get rook to e1, knight to e5 here, suddenly black is really taking over. The knights are becoming extremely active here in the center of the board. You have all these pieces that are not developed here on the queen side, and black is winning, as you can tell from the evaluation bar. So we get knight to e4. Magnus trades, he plays rook to e8, and now this knight is under massive pressure. You can't take the pawn. If you move the knight away, you're going to lose the pawn on e2 and the game. Now, what's amazing is we're only on move 19, but as you guys can tell, white is completely lost, and this just shows how good Magnus can be. So we get f3. Magnus plays knight b6, queen to a5, and now we get this very nasty move c4 here. Magnus is pushing his p, trying to advance the pawn on the c file. There's still threats like f5 to kick the knight and win the tower, but all in all, this is a situation where the game is all but over. So David Anton takes on c4, we get the trade, rook takes d8, and now David Anton plays bishop c1 here. If you play a move like rook fb1, for example, black can play f5, and after knight to f2, there are many different ways to win. One of the cleanest is probably just take and play d3 here, opening up the diagonal for the bishop. And so therefore, we get the move bishop to c1. After bishop c1, Magnus plays f5, targeting the pony on e4, and now we get the move knight f2. Magnus takes the juicer on e2, and here we get the move rook to d1. At this point, there's nothing white can really do. We get d3, rook to b1, d2. Now the bishop is trapped. You can't go to b2 or to a3 here in this position, as you'll lose the bishop. So we get the move king to f1, And now Magnus plays rook d to e8, and at this point David Anton Guerrero from Spain resigns the game because he's going to lose the bishop at the very least. If you don't move the bishop, say you play with, like, I don't even know, like a4 here, for example, black can play rook to e1 here with the pawn and the rook supporting the rook, king g2, and after knight to e3 check, king h3, knight takes rook. The bishop is under attack, the knight's hanging, black has extra rooks. Just a disaster. You will lose 100% of the time. So after rook d8, Magnus gets a big win in this game. This means that Magnus opens his day, he opens this day with a score of 4.5 points out of 5 as well. He is one of the co-leaders. Currently, at the end of day 1, there are 5 players tied for the lead. There's the reigning world champion, Gukesh, the 5-time world champion, Magnus Carlsen. There's Vladislav Artemiev, I believe, and I think there's Arjun Erigaisi as well. There's one other player I'm forgetting, but I don't have the list in front of me at this moment. So there's a 5-way tie for the lead with 4.5 points out of 5. But this is going to do it for a recap of day number 1 of the FIDE World Rapid and Blitz Championship. Gets off to a banging start. A lot of exciting games, a lot of the top players in action. So really fun to cover. We'll see what happens on day 2 tomorrow, but that's going to do it right now for me. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap from day number 1 of the 2025 FIDE World Rapid and Blitz Chess Championship being held in Doha, Qatar. If you are not already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back with another recap tomorrow after the second day of this great event. Hope you guys enjoyed it. See you very soon. Have a great rest of your day. Merry Christmas and happy holidays. Bye.